Thank you, everyone, for listening to Soul Talk with host Jeremy McDonald, the author of Peace Be Still. You can check out more about our shows or about Jeremy at soultalkradio.org and jeremymcdonald.net. And now for our show.
Hello, hello, and thank you all for listening to Soul Talk. We have a great show on today. We have a guest that's been on the show 2 other times in the past few years, Dr. P.M.H. Atwater. This morning, Jeremy can't talk. I was pretty excited about her new book, Dying to Know You, and just a little bit about that. She had a pretty extraordinary experience, and I'm not going to go into details about it because I'm going to let her talk about that, but on a plane ride out to California, and that's all I'm going to leave it at, and let her talk about it. And this is a very extraordinary book because it's not the typical book that Dr. Atwater writes, but it's definitely a gift to the world as far as a book that has been wrote and given to our world. So welcome to the show, Dr. Atwater. How are you this morning?
Well, I'm fine. I'm doing just really great. Well, hey, it's the day before Easter. We should all be doing good.
Absolutely, and the energy was great. I actually woke up this morning and sat on the beach and watched the lunar eclipse. And I got up
lucky you.
It was absolutely beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And then we did the time release pictures, and then got to watch it over the hour-long period. So we posted it on Facebook this morning. It was really nice.
Oh.
Well, so let's talk about this book. The last time we had you on, we were talking about Children of the Fifth World, which is a different topic. And then since then, I think right around that time you were writing this book. Am I correct? Or you were getting ready to write this book? That was in April of 2004.
Yes, I was. It came together very, very quickly. Nice. By the way, the new movie that's going to be coming out, and it's independent. A company. So I'm not sure exactly when it's coming out. It'll be later this spring. It's called Tinker. That movie is based on the book Children of the Fifth World.
Nice.
Yeah, so
well,
I'm really quite thrilled about that.
I think I have that post up still. If you guys want to, if anybody that is interested, it's there's their Facebook is Facebook. /Tinker the Movie, so you can check that out and get more information about Tinker the Movie, and Dr. Atwater has a part in that movie, so definitely check it out. Well, it's still pretty exciting, and of course it comes from your work. If that, that's really cool.
That's what was really excited. It's the whole movie is birthed from that book. And the writer, the very talented writer, had read that book and was so excited that that was the spark that gave birth to the movie Tinker.
Nice, very, very cool, and it's actually very interesting. I'm excited that you say that because I see a lot of creative energy happening. Especially there's always been creative energy, but I just really feel that people are jumping into their creative selves, probably more so in the last couple of years.
Yeah, I've seen that too.
And it's pretty exciting. Even in my own stuff, I've been looking at some of my stuff and saying, how can I make this just more enhanced in the experience and more, from my creative side. And I'm really spending a lot of hours just on, doing that kind of stuff, and because that's what I enjoy. And I really think
we're all being challenged, Jeremy, but by the great shifting that's going on and these huge, massive configurations that are just bombarding the earth with all kinds of energy. And we're seeing a lot of the worst of it, but we're also seeing the best of it. The worst of it is ISIS and this challenge against the modern world, which is very, very ugly, but the best of us, with people realizing now that they have to step forward, they can't step back anymore or hang back. They've got to step forward and do it. It's up to them. And the new children coming forward and saying, let's get rid of a lot of these governments. Let's put in better governments. Let's do it better. Let's do it different. and we're seeing incredible innovation and creativity. So it's infecting us all. We're either getting lifted or we're getting pulled down, and the energy that's doing that is very powerful.
Yeah, definitely. You definitely feel it. You can feel it. Even the ones that do work and are positive, or they're in that, they practice, in that area. I even feel it because it pushes on my limitations, and then of course I have to stop and regroup and think and find growth from it. And I actually found it. Sometimes it can be very intense, but it's very rewarding.
Right.
So it's
right. We're all being hit. Either good, bad, or indifferent. We're being hit, and we're being hit by powerful energy.
Yeah, definitely. So let's talk about the plane ride and what the experience
the infamous plane ride. They gave birth to Dying to Know You, Proof of God in the Near-Death Experience. That book is just a wow kind of book for me to write, to be a part of, to realize it's now published, it's now out in the world, because it's not as you noted before, it's not my regular kind of book. It's not the kind of book I would have ever written on my own. It's certainly not a book I chose to write. So let's be very specific here. I did not choose to write this book. I was, yes, indeed, in the plane, seated in my airplane seat, flying to San Francisco. I had a number of engagements there, about 2.5 weeks' work of talks and classes and all kinds of things that I would be doing, and so I'm just seated in my seat, minding my own business. I'm not doing anything. I'm not thinking anything special. I'm just seated in my seat. And suddenly the air in front of me, about maybe 2 feet in front of me, maybe about a foot and a half, 2 feet, maybe 2.5 feet, anyway, about 2 feet in front of me. And notice I'm saying here air, Jeremy. Air? This is not a disincarnate. This is not an angel. This is not a being of any kind. This is not any of that. I'm very familiar with those kinds of energies and those kinds of manifestations. Nope, wasn't any of that. This is air, just air, the kind you breathe. And the air in front of me started writing a book. First came the cover, then came the frontispiece, then came the table of contents, then came 11 chapters, and then came the back matter. And it just, everything was not in detail, but the bones of it, the structure of it was all there, and what was to be in it. And it just kept going round and round and round like a computer loop. It just kept going and going. And I was sitting in my seat watching this stuff in front of me and thinking, well, this is interesting. and that's, I didn't give it a second thought. I just thought, well, this is an interesting phenomenon. And then after, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes or so, it occurred to me, well, maybe I'd pull out some paper and pencil and start write this down. And so I started writing down what was occurring in front of me. Now, bear in mind, what was occurring in front of me was not a dream. It was not a vision. It had nothing to do with me. Yet there was no being there of any kind. Just intelligent air, I guess. And so touchdown in San Francisco, and I'm engaged now in all of the demands and the scheduling and all this kind of stuff. And whenever I had a free minute, this computer loop would take off again. And this went on for 2.5 weeks. And I got to the point, Jeremy, where I got to be really honest here and say I got angry. I became angry because I couldn't stop this. I had no choice. in this. This was something that was just being thrown at me. I had no free will involved at all. It was just, and I couldn't stop it. And I couldn't figure out where it's coming from. Because, I'm very deep into prayer and meditation, and, I talk to God all the time. And this didn't seem to be from any of those kinds of roots or avenues at all. And so I finally had about 3 days off, and I was staying with a friend of mine, and he said, what you need is, let's go see the redwoods. We lived in the Santa Cruz area. So who would turn that down? So we went to see the redwoods, and we went through this little bitty town in Northern Virginia. It was called Felton. And it's a funky little town. It was so funky, Jeremy, that it had its own Sasquatch museum. That's how funky this place was. And it had a great big antique barn, great big white barn. And right next to the barn was a much smaller wooden building, very plain, but attractive in the wood that was used. And then on the street, the signage said Greek Orthodox Church. Well, I love Greek Orthodox churches. So my friend is going to the antique barn. I'm making a beeline for the church. Fortunately, it was not locked. Walked right in. Nobody there. Walked right up to the Holy of Holies, and back and forth, and finally down on my hands and knees with my forehead to the ground, just begging, to make some sense of this. What is going on here? What do I do about this? And Jeremy, I hear this really soft, grandfatherly voice. And it said, and I quote, hush, child, now do your work. And that was it. But that was so comforting that I decided, well, I still don't understand what this is, but it's of God. So I can do that. As long as I know that this is of God, then I can participate. So I did. I took it seriously then. And came home, started writing the book, got the book done, got it reviewed. Just before publication, this error came back. Oh, it did, and added 2 more chapters. So there's 13 chapters. Chapter 12 and Chapter 13 are extremely small, but they're a complete and total surprise. And I will say to everyone who's listening that Chapter 12, all of the information in Chapter 12, which is scientific, is a real stretch for me to make, or I think for anybody else to make, to say in the manner I said it. I mean, it's just, it blew me away, but I said it because I knew in my heart it was true. And so the book gets published 2 weeks after it's published. The big announcement comes out. This scientific announcement comes out that it has now been scientifically verified. So this is verification from other sources beside the originator, that on DNA, that the Western science blew it. We blew it. We went after the particle, the condoms, the codons, and all this kind of stuff about the DNA and how it works and what it is and what it's made of and proteins and all this kind of stuff, but we totally missed the major part of the DNA. And we call it 97% junk DNA. Well, the junk turned out to be the energetic, that manages, controls, and directs the DNA. Without the energetic component to DNA, there would be no DNA. That DNA, in fact, speaks two languages, not one. And the second language, or I should say the first language, the main language, is the invisible part of DNA, the energetic that runs it and controls it and directs it, which is saying that all of life is run by the energetic. Without the energetic component of DNA, there would be no life at all. And that it's the power. And, we all have to, I think, stop in our tracks and say, wait a minute here. We're talking about auras. We're talking about the field. Hey, maybe, just maybe, the aura is the energetic DNA. We are seeing DNA. That the field itself is DNA combined with whatever, and that announcement absolutely guaranteed and solidified and announced that everything that I wrote in Chapter 12 is absolutely true. It's the way it is. It is not any kind of leap of faith, although when I wrote it at the time I thought it was. It is absolutely factual. It's now been scientifically verified worldwide. And I'm stepping back and I'm saying, wow, there's something else going on with this book than anything I ever thought. And when I stepped back and gave that more attention, then I realized that there isn't any other book like this on the market. It hasn't been written. And that is, this is a book by the collective, through the voice of the collective, about the collective experience. This is a book about, well, not about, this is a book voiced by thousands and thousands and thousands of adult and child experiencers of near-death states. All I did was sum the voice of the many. And, it's their voice. It's not your voice. It's not my voice. It's not, this is not another Eben Alexander or Anita Morjani or all these wonderful people. They're wonderful people. Their stories are wonderful. This is the collective voice. This is everybody's voice. And when I look at that, Jeremy, I don't know about you, but I'm just awestruck. And I'm awestruck the way it came to me and the way the remaining 2 chapters came. How are we going to get the word out to everybody that this is a very unique book that really speaks to the heart of the near-death experience from the heart of near-death experiencers?
Yeah. Well, and I think we're on the verge, I feel we're on the verge of people starting to see this kind of stuff. I had a girl the other day that knows nothing about what we teach in our, I call it our world, but it's really not a world. And she was experiencing amazing experiences. She's just a 27-year-old single mother, and things standing before her that weren't there, and distortions in her bedroom and other things. And I was like, well, everything is energy, everything.
Yeah.
And what you're experiencing as energy or consciousness, and it's just in its movement. And then another young man who knows nothing about what we do, healing his toe that was broken. And because he said, if I could just put my hand there and allow whatever this is around me, just energy, to say, heal this and see it healed, what would that do? So, I think the world, watching the world wake up, And it's funny, in Chapter 12, you actually say, the universe is awake. It is we who have been sleeping.
Right.
And I think, we're...
Yeah, I mean, just look at what they found with DNA, Yeah. I mean, just look at that. And the fact that it speaks a second language, once we figure out what that language is, maybe DNA could then make another kidney when one wears out, make another heart when one wears out. I mean, who's to say that couldn't happen?
Yeah. Well, I've heard a lot recently about the body's ability to heal itself. And, of course, in holistic, they talk about that. But I'm really just hearing that's really coming out a lot. And, my roommate and I have been doing more juicing and eating more raw vegetables and stuff like that. And we're really...
I bet you feel better.
Oh, yeah, we feel a lot better. And it's, of course, the average person, they're just so busy, they tend to fall back into habits, but I'm finding that I can get more done with more energy. And, I know you know what it's like to have a busy schedule. It is very...
Yeah. Well, this wonderful little book, Dying to Know You, we absolutely cannot ignore, and the world cannot ignore, that between 90 to 95% of near-death experiencers come back knowing God. Notice I did not say believing God. Belief implies doubt. They come back knowing God. Now, not all of them call God God. Some use terms like source or the one mind. They may change the term, but they still come back knowing God and realizing and knowing that there is one mind. It's like one mind, many thinkers. We're all thinkers or extensions of the one mind, and that one mind really is existent, always has been existent, that intelligence, that incredible intelligence. And the children come back with the same thing. It's not just adults. And it's not the idea, it's not this idea of gender, although some of them come back still using he and him and father. But, I really picked up that when they do that, it's almost like a habit phrase. It's like most people, across the world, if they want to talk about something that's divine, or if they want to talk about something that's powerful, or if they want to talk about something that's sort of head above everybody else, they call that a masculine term. They don't use feminine terms. They use masculine. And so I picked that up a lot with people still using terms like he, God the Father. It's God. It's God to God. But in the book, I did use the term God, Allah, deity, to cover the three major ways that we on planet Earth tend to refer to something that is divine or something that is above and beyond any words that we can use. So I did honor the Christian, the Muslim, and then everybody else, the idea of deity. So I did use the term God, Allah, deity a lot in the book, but I'll tell you, some of that stuff in there, I'm saying, wake up, world, read this book. Read what people are saying and knowing and describing and read what they're telling us.
I think you said it. I actually listened to another interview when you were talking about this book, and you mentioned that those are habit phrases, and I agree with that. I know of God and have experienced that, and I still say he because of my very Christian upbringing, but in my mind while I'm saying it, I know what I'm saying. Now, people hear it as just male.
And maybe it's time for us to clean up our language.
Yeah,
because there are a few that come back with the idea of gender, but most of them don't. I mean, the vast majority do not. And we're talking about millions upon millions upon millions of people. The conservative estimate worldwide of people who've had a near-death experience is 4 to 5% of the population, meaning standard population, across the board. Well, that's a huge number. Certainly, the numbers aren't necessarily that big. If you close down and look at a more focused population, for instance, hospital people, in that regard, it's about 12 to maybe 21% of those people who are hospitalized will have a near-death experience. But if you get out of the hospital environment, that's where most of them occur. We've got this idea from the media. I call it a media myth. And they're really pounding it into our skulls these last few years with all of these television shows, interview shows, documentaries, films, one after another, and they always feature almost entirely feature only those people who are hospitalized. So you get the hospital background, you get the machinery, you get the doctors, you get the nurses, and of course this is what delights researchers because this is the first kind of spiritual or transcendent experience that they can research because it happens in the hospitals. Well, only 12 to 21%, somewhere in that area, happen in hospitals. The rest of them don't. The rest of them happen out in the field, or the drownings, or the fevers, or so on and so forth. They're not in a hospital. The majority of near-death experiences do not occur in hospitals. It's like the other media myth about tunnels. Very few people experience a tunnel. Back in 1982, when Gallup Poll did their first scientific survey of people who'd had near-death experiences, only 9% reported a tunnel. You can track this back. You can track it back to when the media had sensationalized Raymond Moody's first book, Life After Life. That's when you started hearing about tunnels. You didn't hear about it before. And still today, there aren't that many people who talk about tunnels. So you get all these new age or new science or people on the leading edge who are talking about wormholes and tunnels depict the wormhole and and they get into mythology and all of this talking about the tunnel and either they don't know what they're talking about or they're not familiar with near-death research because they're taking a very small component of this experience and they're pretending like it's big, it's major, it's a signature feature, and it's not. So I was just reading today in Atlantic Rising magazine, and if nobody's discovered Atlantic Rising magazine, they need to. And there was a scientist in the most recent issue talking about wormholes and comparing them to the tunnels of the near-death experience. And I'm just shaking my head and saying, apparently this guy is not familiar with the research. He's only familiar with the media myth.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting too because when I've read your books and I've read Raymond's books or Dr. Moody's books. Neither one of you talk. That's not the only thing you refer to. I don't think I've ever read in any of his books where he talks about the tunnel. I think, and I
no, he didn't make a big deal of it either. It was the media.
Right.
You know, we're being controlled by the media. They're reinterpreting life for us.
And the movies and everything else, sensationalized.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So here we've got a dynamic book, and it is. I can call it that because it is. And it's giving us another picture.
Proof of God in the near-death experience. Yeah. So you were basically talking to a collective of voices. Is that what this distortion?
Well, bear in mind my research base is nearly 4,000 adults and children. So that's just of my research base. That's not counting all the others I know about, have heard about, have read about in other people's books and so forth. Meet on the street, on and on and on. So I can say without any hesitation here that I think it's a lot closer to 10,000. But you know, I can't say that with any authority, but I can certainly suspect that it's closer to that figure, but it's nearly 4,000, and you consider adults and children, so that's a lot of people. You know, that's not just one or two. That's just 5 or 6 or 50 or 100 or 500. That's a lot of people. And it's those voices. And all I did was just sum them up. I didn't invent anything. I didn't put words in anybody's mouth. I just summed up what they have been telling me for years. And in other books, I've carried some of it. But in this book, it just all flowed out. And in ways that I really feel I had no control over. These voices wanted to be heard, and they wanted to be heard that way. Now, what I did do later on is I invited anybody and everybody who had a near-death experience or something like it to draw me a picture of their experience or something from their experience and send it to me. And 40 people did that. 40 people in 6 countries did that. So I put these drawings together, and they're in a PowerPoint, and I give presentations where these 40 drawings, and by the way, it's straight through. It's 1 hour straight through, about a minute and a half, minute, 3/4, almost 2 minutes on each picture, each drawing, and they just go straight through. So they're playing on a screen, and I'm nearby at a sharing from the book on a music stand. So it's just a music stand, me standing there, and I'm in costume. I'm wearing a costume, special costume in honor of my husband, and I'm sharing material from the book as these drawings are played. And it's the scientific idea of entanglement. That is to say, you've got two different things, and once they meet, they become the same. So you've got 2 different programs here going on instantaneously, side by side. At the end of the program, they join. So, of course, that's not in the book, but that's, anybody who wants to order that, sponsor me, bring me out to give the program, I would love to do that. But in the meantime, get the book. In fact, I'm telling everybody, Jeremy, get 2 or 3. Get one for yourself and pass them out. Because I'm just hearing, what's your take on this?
About the experience with the slides? What you're talking about reading from the book?
No, about the book.
I think when we think about the energy of this book and about what's talking through it, I think this is pretty profound. I mean, and the interesting part, and this is kind of my take on it, is because you're such a solid researcher in your research over so many years, and it comes through somebody who's had many experiences, 3 near-death experiences. I think you're like the perfect voice for it, in a sense, right? And I'm only saying that because if I was to look and see your work and then see this book, I wouldn't put the two together. But because it's coming through you, it makes me really want to believe it, because I know that you really thought about this and knew what you were going into. Like you said, I knew this came from God, and I knew that, based on the interviews I've done with you, you wouldn't have done it if you wouldn't have wrote it if you didn't know for sure where it was coming from.
Absolutely.
So I think that speaks volumes.
Yeah. I mean, this is no channeled book, and I'm not putting down channeling. I'm saying there's no go-between here.
Right.
I couldn't have done that kind of book. No way. I'm just not that kind of person. I would not allow that. This had to be direct, and it was direct. But I'd like to share some of the things that are in this book. Most of the people, when they're talking about God, they're talking about light, and they're talking about light. It's not like your backyard, yard light. They're talking about, adults, when they talk about light, they talk about a light that is so powerful that it's stronger, more powerful than that of 10,000 suns. So you can imagine a power, an electricity, a force that's more powerful than 10,000 suns. And they say, instantly you're fried, but there's no pain. And that this light knows your name. It knows all about you. You can't lie to this light. It's just a phenomenal experience to be in this light. And when I look at that, I'm thinking power voltage. And when children talk about this light, when children talk about God or this light on the other side, they're also saying things that make me think that there's an electricity here or a power similar to that, because children often will see God on the other side of death as being a male figure or a grandfather figure. Children see this a lot, but children are not inhibited like adults are, and they'll go up to this light and they'll go up to this person, this grandfather or this male figure, and they will say, "Is this what you really look like?" And at that moment, this grandfatherly figure will instantly become this incredible light. It just pow, and then it bursts into this incredible light. And they'll ask angels too, is this what you really look like? And children often see angels with wings. They do. This is not made up, this little bitty ones that couldn't possibly have made this up or seen it anywhere, and they'll come back about angels with wings. But those that ask the angels, a similar question that they'll ask to God, is this what you really look like? Instantly, that angel will burst into light too, although the angel's light is not as big and powerful as God's light, but it's the same thing. It's this idea of voltage, of power, of electricity, or something like that on the other side. I believe it was Thomas Edison who was convinced that the soul is made up of life units, that is to say microscopic particles. And he died before he could complete building the machine that he felt could detect them. And, all these ghost hunters today, they carry these voltage meters because, they feel that it can pick up these particles, this electricity, this voltage. And so you again and again and again you have this idea that that this power really is power, and that it has, it's something like electricity, or maybe something even more powerful than electricity, although what could be, but, I'm not a scientist. But we're talking about something very, very real here, physically real in how it affects people, because when you come back afterward, about 71%, right in that figure somewhere, of those people with their after effects have electrical sensitivity, and I'm one of them. So this is a very real phenomenon. This is not just pictures. This is not just vision. This is not just dreams. Although I'm not putting down any of that because those are all powerful, but I'm saying this has a physical component.
Well, and that's probably what you're talking about too. Is like the people that have experiences, they're experiencers. They have problems with computers where they're. I've heard of them. Their computers dying or getting shorted out, and many other things. So it's
cars, light bulbs, TV sets, microphones. I can give you a long list.
Yeah. I've actually. Since the last interview I had, I moved all my computers and everything out of my room because I had like 5 computers in my room.
Yeah, get them out of there.
The hum of the noise of them alone, because my mind goes so quiet when I'm sleeping, it wakes me up.
Oh, I can believe that. Please tell everybody, or at least I am now telling everybody who's listening, I produce a free monthly newsletter. So you get on my website, which is www.PMHAtwater.com, and scroll over to newsletter and then subscribe. There is an archive, and every once in a while I put out an extra. So sometimes you get 2 for the price of 1, which is free, double free. But you get in the archive and go back. I think it's about a year. Maybe a year and a half, and you'll get that newsletter on electrical sensitivity. And there's a lot of specific ideas in there for how to handle computers and digital devices, modems, Wi-Fi, and this kind of thing, but especially also lightning storms, tornadoes, and earthquakes, because you can be very much affected by the electrical effect of these kinds of storms and earth changes if you have electrical sensitivity. And it's a really big deal. So I'm telling everybody, hey, get on my website, go to the archive, get that newsletter that was on electrical sensitivity, and that might be helpful to you.
And for those that are listening, if you go to her website that she's said, PMHAtwater.com, there's actually, it says right at the top, subscribe now to her free monthly newsletter, and you click on that hyperlink, and you can go right in there and subscribe. So most definitely. I'm sure I know that was helpful. So it's interesting because I've found, too, there's a lot of people that have an experience, and they're so, I had talked to one girl. She died at 27, had an experience, and when she came back, the experience was so profound and so loving for her. And she was a single mom. And when she came back, she found the world very harsh. And she wanted to go back. She felt like she needed to be here for her daughter. And at 28, she died again, but this time she didn't come back.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, there is suicide. People don't like to talk about it. Usually the near-death experience is a deterrent. to suicides, but in some cases, people do attempt and try to get back to the other side again because they can't handle this side. The after effects are both physiological as well as psychological, and they're very real. Read Near-Death Experiences, The Rest of the Story, or the Big Book of Near-Death Experiences. All of them go into the after effects. When you read other people's books, usually all they talk about in the way of after effects is you lose the fear of death, become more psychic, more intuitive, more innovative, more charitable, more service-oriented. They don't get into the physiological after effects and the effect these have on relationships, families, children, spouses, the world at large, jobs, this kind of thing. And it tends to turn people's lives topsy-turvy. Not everybody, of course, but a lot of them. And some of the big after effects that I really, really stress and mention and talk a lot about is that afterward you lose your tolerance for pharmaceuticals. So you don't go running to a doctor or a hospital without knowing or being willing to tell these people, please give me a child's dose of whatever it is you want to give me, or half of a child's dose, or instead of running to an MD, run to a DO, which is a doctor of osteopathy or homeopathy, or go the way of natural healing or energy medicine. And that will help you a lot. We come back very sensitive to sound, to light, of course, electrical sensitivity. It changes brain structure, brain function, changes the nervous system, the digestive system, and skin sensitivity. So you're talking about something that's very real, doesn't hit everybody the same or right away, but eventually, within a couple of years of it, certainly, you'll see major differences, like you can't wear watches again unless they are sun-powered instead of battery powered. And you have to make some adjustments. And one of the biggest adjustments, of course, in relationships is your language, how you turn your language around, your desires, your wants, your goals. Those all turn. They flip on a switch. And the family is just left bereft. It's like, what happened here? We're praying for our loved one to come back, and, we weren't thinking of a remodeled, rewired version. We just want the same one we lost.
They don't always talk about that in the books. They talk about all the beautiful experience that they had, but they don't talk about what happens when they come back. And you give me some confirmation, because I've talked to you about this before, about a shared experience I had with my mother. But what we've just confirmed for me is I've actually been, probably in the last couple of years, getting more and more right. I have trouble being around people. It's not an anxiety. It's just I feel more comfortable being at home just with my dog.
Well, you'd be comfortable around people more like you.
Yeah,
and that's one of the reasons. Yeah, that's one of the reasons why my husband and I go to Unity Church. Then you've got Centers of Spiritual Living, which used to be called the Church of Religious Science. They're now Centers of Spiritual Living. And these are churches that more or less speak the language. They're metaphysical churches, and they're churches that are more in tune with the kind of thing you experienced. So they're easier to be around. Certainly, you're not going to find anything just like the new you, but you can come close. And certainly, this idea of mindfulness, prayer, and meditation that really helps you to walk on the earth plane in different shoes and still feel good about being here and being able to function here, and dealing with words like appropriateness. I use that a lot in how I deal with people, how I react, how I respond. I always ask first, before I commit myself, before I do something, is this appropriate for my highest good and the highest good of all concerned in divine order? And if I get to feeling like no or squeezing or wanting to back up, then I know the answer is no, and I will not get involved. However, if I get, a euphoria or a lift or wanting to bend forward, then I know the answer is yes. And even if it's screwy, I'll do it because it's a yes. And it's a different way of functioning in the world, and it works. It helps make the world more exciting, more fun, less threatening.
I just wanted to back up real quick. Well, first of all, everybody, you can get this book on Amazon, and I know you can get it at Rainbow Ridge Books website, and I'm sure Barnes & Noble. Those two websites are the ones that I looked at this morning, which is Rainbow Ridge Books and Amazon. So I know you can get it there. So I definitely check it out there. I'm sure that you can go to Dr. Atwater's website and find stuff about it there as well. So I'm sure that's under.
They can get it at any bookstore. Yeah, they can get it at any bookstore. If the bookstore doesn't have it, they can order it for them. It's available anywhere, everywhere. And the book talks about the soul. It talks about God. It talks about heaven and hell. It just covers everything from the voice of the person who was there, who did it, who went through it.
Well. I wanted to tell you really quick that you might enjoy this, because I know you said you love Greek Orthodox churches. There is a little place here in Tarpon Springs called the Shrine of St. Michael, and it was built in the 1920s by a woman that she swears that Michael came and healed her son that was dying. And she built it because it was in honor of Michael. And when you sit in the church, you can just feel this presence. What was real quick 10-second story, I was there one day, and I was having one of those moments with a friend of mine, and my friend was really depressed. And the woman walked up and gave her 3 cotton balls that had holy water on it. And she says, put these here, and put these here. And she whispers in her head. She could barely speak English. And she says, I think you need this. Blessings. You're beautiful. And walks away. And so it has a healing. It has a healing presence there. And so it's if you're ever in the Tampa area, Tarpon Springs, the Shrine of St. Michael. So it's pretty cool.
Well, this book ought to lift and heal a lot of people.
Absolutely. So we got a few more minutes. I just want to throw out there real quick, definitely check out PMHAtwater.com for those that are listening. Dr. Atwater, what would you like to we got about 6 minutes left. What would you like to throw out there that we didn't talk about throughout the hour?
Well, we didn't talk about a lot. This comes out in the book, and it comes out very strongly in the book, that the greatest fear we have in living out our life on earth is not what might happen to us, but what might be expected from us if we recognized who we are. There was a woman by the name of Philomena Jitt, J-I-T, Jitt, who passed away for the second time, June 16, 2013. 39 years before, while giving birth to her son via a C-section, she died. She was clinically dead for 4 hours. She was toe-tagged for delivery to the morgue when she suddenly sat up. Of course, frightening both the morgue and the hospital staff. I met her while I was giving talks in the New York area in the late 80s, and I kid you not, I was so impressed with her radiant glow and her enthusiasm for life, and her near-death experience had transformed her life utterly. She was a mother, she was a wife, she had several part-time jobs, she was married. She had a happy and successful life after her near-death experience. She wasn't touring the world, she didn't write books, she didn't become an authority, she just became a very happy and loving woman. And I'm saying to the world, and I'm saying to everybody that is listening, let's not lose sight of the millions of Philomenas. They don't write bestsellers. You don't see them on a stage. Yet each is living testimony to what else we are capable of as human beings.
Thank you for that. Thank you. It's very much a blessing.
Let's all be like Philomena's. The major one repeated phrase that most experiencers make anywhere in the world, when they come back, usually the first thing they say is, always there's life. And, that's just 4 words, always there's life. But if you really look at that, that means there's no before life, there's no now life, there's no afterlife. It means there is always life. In some form, in some way, on some dimension, we have always lived, we are living now, and we always will live. It means literally that eternity is our home.
I don't think we think about that very often. We think about
not at
the
all.
past, we put things in a compartment. Well,
tell
so
everybody
much,
to get
Dr.
the book and pass it out to other people.
Everybody gets the book
word.
"Dying to Know You" by P.M.H. Atwater. I know that you will not be sorry. It's actually a fairly quick read. It doesn't. It has a lot of information. So
it is the smallest, most powerful book I ever wrote.
Well, that is a blessing in itself, and thank you, Dr. Atwater, for being on the show, and I am looking forward to future shows in the future of your work.
I'm working on another book. Tell everybody, be sure in May to be on my newsletter, because I'm making a big announcement. So,
wonderful.
In the month of May, be tuned to my big announcement.
And that's not that far around the corner, so everybody go to PMHAtwater.com and sign up for her newsletter.
Yeah.
So, thank you. You have a wonderful day. I'm sure it's beautiful in Virginia. I'm assuming you're home.
It is. We're actually got spring for once instead of snow and ice. We're so happy. Much love to all of you and your audience.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.